whatever.
Whatever?
Wow.
Whatever?
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the second trailer for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. There was a lot to break down in this one, new plot details, even more spider people, and basically 60 years of comics history all packed into a couple minutes. So get ready, we're gonna dive real deep into this one. The trailer opens with Miles narrating.
My name is Miles Morales.
Now this is of course how the original Raimi films opened.
Who am I? You sure you want to know?
But also, they repeated this as a gag in the first Spider-Verse with every spider person introducing themselves with new narration.
My name is Peter B. Parker.
My name is Gwen Stacy.
My name is Peter Parker.
My name is Penny Parker.
My name is Peter Parker.
Until, at the end, Miles finally took over his own story. And now, he's bragging.
I'm Brooklyn's one and only Spider-Man.
Which sounds like he's rubbing in that a man died and made him the only Spider-Man. Not cool, Miles, not cool. So we see Miles struggling to keep up with his everyday life, juggling school and his spider heroics. Now across the whole multiverse, it seems like there's really just two constants with the spider people, a tragic backstory and a problem with their work-life balance. Now the work-life balance was the focus of the Raimi films, while the Garfield movies tended to focus on the tragic backstory element. Now there is a nod to these live-action stories in the international trailer, which opens with each Spider-Man narrating about their own particular sacrifices and trying to prove themselves.
Sometimes, to do what's right, we have to give up the thing we want the most.
That the more people I try to save, the more enemies I will make.
Now, this could be a hint that these guys are going to be in this movie. Tom Holland was originally going to cameo in Spider-Verse, but the filmmakers decided that would have been too much of a distraction. It seems like this movie might actually swerve toward tragic backstory. I don't want to get too much into plot speculation since we're so close to the movie's release, but the end of the trailer makes it seem like Miles' father is going to die, and the other Spider people need to prevent Miles from saving him. This could be because maybe Spider-Man 2099 is from a future where Miles' father died. Or maybe his dad's death is the only way to stop the movie's multiverse traveling villain, the Spot, but more on him in just a second. We see the scene from the first trailer where Miles gets frustrated at having to explain why he's late.
You were supposed to be here at 5.
Alright, whatever.
Whatever?
Now notice that he is noticeably older in this movie. He's taken on more responsibilities as Spider-Man, and he's getting pretty good grades, and he probably feels like he doesn't know anybody an explanation for where he's been or why he's late. So his comment here is a kind of justified get off my back to his parents. And of course they don't know he's Spider-Man, so they have no idea what kind of extra work he's doing around the city beyond delivering boxes to a roof party. And it is kind of funny that this is like a community party on a roof, because Miles could have saved himself a lot of time by landing straight on the roof, but he had to take the long way up to preserve his identity. Once again showing how he has to do a little bit of extra work to balance out his two lives.
Hey person, is it true that in 2007 you got to see the first Transformers movie on the big screen?
Yeah, why?
Oh, I wish I could. Jeez, that'd be so awesome. Optimus Prime arriving on Earth for the first time in live action. Oh.
Actually, buddy, you can watch any movie you want on the big screen right at home with this Capsule 3 laser projector from Nebula. This is the best portable projector that I have ever owned. First of all, it's very light, just under 2 pounds. But more importantly is the ultra laser brightness and high image quality. See, most projectors broadcast with an LED image with white light, but this one projects with the colors you're actually watching, and at 300 ANSI lumens. In fact, it's 1.8 times brighter than an LED image with the same wattage. Crystal clear picture and Dolby sound quality. But this one is especially cool because it's got a killer Optimus Prime design, perfect for watching some classic Transformers. The capsule's battery lasts for 2.5 hours, just long enough for a movie. Or if you use it as a Bluetooth speaker, the battery lasts for 10.5 hours. The best thing is, this is an all-in-one projector with Android TV 10.0. You can download more than 7,000 apps, including Netflix and YouTube. You don't even need to use the HDMI inputs. It's like carrying a smart TV wherever you go. This projector is a great addition to your home or a great gift for your favorite movie fan. Now, ordinarily, the sale price of this thing is $899, but for the month of April, you can get $120 off when you visit our link in the description. Thanks again to Nebula for sponsoring this video. Now, back to what I was saying. And then we go to the Spot, using his powers to try and rob an ATM. So the Spot is the most unlikely villain we could have had in this movie, but he is the perfect choice, because we will probably never get to see him in live action, and his powers are going to be a really fun translation to animation. In the comics, he was created by Al Milgrom and Herb Trimpe. He was a scientist named Dr. Jonathan Owen who worked for the Kingpin. Now, the Kingpin was trying to replicate the powers of this hero called Cloak. Cloak cloak had basically a magic cloak that connected to a dark dimension that was like super scary and allowed him to teleport around. It is possible that Own worked for the Kingpin in this reality, creating that portal to the multiverse from the first movie, and much like in the comics, this work backfired and turned him into the Spot. So in the books, Own was trying to create the cloak's powers, and then he created this big black portal. He stepped through it and found himself in another space filled with these dots. After going back through the portal, he was transformed with all these dimensional portals all over his body. But he also gained the ability to create these portals that allow him to transport into different places or across dimensional barriers. In fact, the first time he told Spider-Man his name, he laughed at him so hard he had to rest. And even though he beat Spidey in their first fight, he's always been a joke villain. He even created a team of like Z-list villains called the Legion of Losers. The thing is though that even though he's always a joke, the guy does have an amazing power. He can create these space warping spots. Now Jason Schwartzman voices him in the movie, and it kind of feels like he begins as a joke. Notice that when he's trying to rob the ATM, he's wearing a disguise, and he doesn't even get that his powers don't allow him to pass through objects, just to teleport himself through different areas of space. Now I think his powers are going to be tied to the multiverse somehow, and that he's actually opening up rifts in space-time without realizing it. This would make a lot of sense if he got his powers from that portal accident in the first movie. So the Spider people need to stop Spot before he can destroy the multiverse, and somehow Miles' dad has to die to assure this happens.
Why does somebody always have to die in this scenario?
And then the encounter with Spot leads into a fight which affects Miles' work-life balance, as he's late for a parent-teacher conference. Here's where we see that he's still getting good grades, even with the spider life. But then...
And a B in Spanish.
Ooh, okay. Miles. Are you trying? Mira.
So Miles' dad is African American and his mother is Puerto Rican, and this is an important part of his identity in the books. Notice that he has a BLM sticker on his bag, and later we see that Gwen has a Protect Trans Kids flag in her room. Now speaking of Gwen, just when it seems like his life is at a breaking point, she shows up in a portal over his bed, just like how the first Spider-Verse ended. Except Miles is noticeably older in this scene, so maybe she's visited him in the past as well. He's wearing a jersey that says Brooklyn 42. Now, the number 42 appeared all through the first movie, probably as an homage to Jackie Robinson, the guy who broke the color barrier in the major leagues, whose number has been permanently retired in Major League Baseball. So as the portal opens, we see objects swirl and posters on the wall. Now we broke these down in our last breakdown video, but my favorites are this Way of the Butterfly poster in the same font as the Way of the Dragon poster, and this Pro Skater video game that looks like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game from PS1, and that game had a code that would unlock Spider-Man as a playable character, and it was awesome. There's also a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, a great comic about a bell ringer who died in a fire but was then taken to heaven. There's also a superhero story at the beginning of that comic that featured a new character called Spider-Man. And there's also the bus tickets on the wall from Miles' first trip upstate when he originally met Gwen, so it's clear that she's been on his mind for a long time. Also, Miles lying on his bed looking up and thinking about Gwen, and then her appearing in his ceiling reminds me an awful lot of the fantasy sequences in American Beauty. Gwen appears in a series of hexagons.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast!
And I know that we spent a lot of time talking about hexagons when they appeared in WandaVision and how hexagons are used in the MCU when the characters warp through space. But I think there's something that connects all of these, and it's also from the comics and very cool. So hexagons are the most structurally stable shape in nature. It's why bees build them as hives. So what if the underlying fabric of the universe is actually made of hexagons? See, Wanda's powers are rooted in the manipulation of reality, so her powers manifest as hexagonal shapes. Space warp fields tap into this fundamental structure of the universe, also hexagons. But more importantly, the hexagons are very similar to the shape of a spider web. In the Spider-Verse comics crossover, and boy this gets complicated, there is this family of immortal beings who hunt spider people across the multiverse, and they can find the spider beings because they have access to the grand web of life and destiny. It's basically a giant metaphysical spider web that crosses through all realities. Every spider person is connected in this web, which is how their spider sense works. They're sensing a ripple in the multiverse, and subconsciously they're perceiving an alternate future where they're harmed by a bullet or like the metal arm of an octopus man.
Your friends call you Doc Ock?
My friends actually call me Liv. My enemies call me Doc Ock.
So hexagons are used to travel the multiverse in this movie because they are connected through this web of life and destiny. That's pretty cool. Thanks, man, I thought so too. And as Miles says,
There's an elite crew with all the best spider people in it?
we're introduced to our new spider variants in this film. There's Issa Rae's Spider-Woman, who is a spin on a great character from the comics. She first appeared in Marvel Spotlight number 32 in 1977, and her origins have changed like a few times in the comics. And like all the best stuff from the comics, it gets weird. So when Jessica Drew was young, her family moved near Mount Wundagore, which was the site of Chthon's temple in the Multiverse of Madness. But in the comics, it was the home of the High Evolutionary, the villain in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's also where Scarlet Witch and Pietro were born, delivered by a cow midwife. So the proximity to Wundagore and all its radiation made young Jessica very sick, so her dad saved her life with a serum filled filled with spider blood, hence spider powers. Then she was raised by the High Evolutionary. But then this was all retconned by another comic called Spider-Woman Origin that shows her getting her powers from a laser when she was in utero and the laser was filled with spider DNA. Now at one point Hydra captured her, recruited her, brainwashed her, wiped her memories, and gave her a new codename. But then she was sent to assassinate Nick Fury, learns Hydra is evil, joins S.H.I.E.L.D., then goes back to Hydra. It's all very back and forth and a lot of fun. But this version of Spider-Woman is probably a nod to a comic spin-off of Spider-Man's appearance on the Electric Company. It showed an Electric Company character named Valerie finding the spider suit and becoming a hero. And then we see Spider-Punk, voiced by Daniel Kaluuya. So he is from an Earth where he was a homeless teenager named Hobie Brown who was transformed from a spider bite from Norman Osborn's toxic waste dumping. Being all punk rock, he leads the people of New York against Osborn's Venom troops.
Wait, just how punk is he?
He's so punk he killed Norman Osborn by bashing him with the guitar.
Yeah, that is pretty punk.
And the animation around him is pretty punk too, imitating the album covers of bands like the Sex Pistols. I should also mention that Hobie Brown in the 616 universe was the original Prowler, just like Miles' Uncle Aaron in the first movie. And then we see one of my favorite characters from the original Spider-Verse crossover, Pavitar Prabhakar, an Indian alternate version of Spider-Man. The character is a lot of fun and he fights demonic versions of classic Spider-Man villains. Now, there are a lot of spider people in this trailer. A lot. Some of them appeared in the last trailer, some are new, and I'm going to run down all of them at the end of this video. That'll give Doug time to finish looking them all up.
I'm going as fast as I can, person. They're so blurry.
But I will talk about a few of my favorites along the way, like this steampunk Spider-Woman who is named Mayabelle Riley, aka Lady Spider. This is a younger version of Aunt May when she built a steampunk suit and she still had her maiden name Riley. She is from the year 1895 on Earth 803, and she had a childhood fascination with spiders, even once telling one of her dad's pet spiders that nobody can cage you. Now, after her father died, tragic backstory, she created a corset with mechanical arms and web shooters. And best of all, she fights Victorian version villains of the classic spider villains. And then we meet maybe the main villain of the movie and one of my favorite spider characters, Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, voiced by Oscar Isaac. The character was created by the great Peter David and Rick Leonardi. Peter David is currently having some health problems, and I really hope that Marvel is kicking back some royalties to him for creating a character that's about to make them millions of dollars. Peter David is a super nice guy. This is us. So here's the story of Miguel. Like Miles, he has mixed ancestry with a Mexican mother and an Irish father. Kind of long story. Spider-Man was the flagship character of Marvel's 2099 comics line, a mixed bag that also included a great run of Doom 2099 by Warren Ellis, where Doom actually conquers the world. So like in the year 2099, there are no longer any superheroes. There is a scientist named Miguel O'Hara who works for an evil corporation called Alchemax, and we saw an early version of Alchemax in the last Spider-Verse movie. Miguel tries to quit the company, so they hook him on a drug that attaches to his DNA, and to get rid of his addiction, he puts himself into his own experimental chamber. His boss tries to sabotage it, and Miguel gains the powers of a spider. At first, he just wants to live a normal life, but over the different issues, he turns into a rebel against the corporations and fights to bring Alchemax down. Great comic. Now, in the movies, he was teased in the post-credits scene of Spider-Verse.
You're a bit late.
We can't all be everywhere at once.
Little text might have been nice.
And Lila is his hologram assistant who is comic relief in the comics. Now, in the trailer, we see him fighting the Vulture. Now, the Vulture in the 2099 books was a crazy cult leader, and Miguel actually kills him, or at least lets him die in issue 3. Well, I mean, look, he comes back, but he seems like he's dead for a really long time. Now, notice how his design is based around the Renaissance artwork of Leonardo da Vinci, who actually designed a helicopter. Very cool. Miguel seems to be the leader of this group of spider people, and he developed these wristbands to help him navigate through the multiverse. This is very similar to the time-space GPS bands that Tony Stark created in Avengers Endgame that allowed the Avengers to travel throughout the multiverse. Now, Miguel really does not want Miles to be a part of whatever the spider people are doing. He seems to distrust teenage Spider-Men because they are irresponsible, and even says,
"Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd back on Earth 1999-99.
So, this connects the Spider-Verse to the MCU. Amazing. It makes sense because all of these different movies are traveling throughout the multiverse, and we did see an animated universe in the Multiverse of Madness. So Miguel is referencing the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, which showed the meeting of 3 live-action Peters. In that movie, a multiversal rift opened that nearly destroyed an entire reality, all because one teenager wanted to get into college. But also, Peter 1 risked the fate of the multiverse so he could save the lives of a few villains. So maybe Miguel is afraid that Miles will do something similar, that he would risk the entire multiverse to save the life of his dad. So in the previous trailer, we saw Miguel watching videos of his daughter Rayella, who, according to Heavy Spoiler, is named after Riley, the maiden name of Aunt May. Like I said before, Miguel has a much more ruthless nature, so he would have let those villains die in Spider-Man No Way Home. But also, maybe his daughter died in his present timeline, and rather than go back and save her life, he's willing to let that sacrifice stand. So he especially would be offended that Miles would try to save his dad when his daughter is lost to him forever. Now, Miguel also calls the MCU
Earth 1999-99.
But wait, Christine called the main universe number 616.
Right, so here's the thing. Earth 616 is the comic universe. The MCU was always designated Earth 199999. Aman Vellani even affirmed this in an interview once.
As much as Kevin Feige can make us think that it's 616, it is 199999.
Now I think that Christine has her own labeling system that is inconsistent with the correct labeling system. So the MCU is Earth 199999 and the comic books are Earth 616. And then we get the return of Peter B. Parker, voiced by Jake Johnson.
Go easy on the kid. He had a terrible teacher. Peter.
He is with his daughter Mayday Parker, who is also from the comics. There is an alternate universe where Peter is retired from a leg injury and his teenage daughter May becomes Spider-Girl, and her nickname was Mayday. There's also a spider suit hanging up in the background, and later we see a kind of a blank page where it's kind of sketched out. I wonder if this was a prototype suit, or if it's connected to that grand web of life and destiny that I mentioned earlier. Miguel says,
being Spider-Man is a sacrifice.
As we see Gwen mourning Peter. Now in the comics, and in the previous movie, we saw that her best friend Peter was also the Lizard, but he's in a spider suit here, so this could be her finding a dead Peter in an alternate universe, or maybe they just switched up his origin a bit. Endless variations of probabilities in different universes after all. Next we see the Spot in the Spotverse, and notice how he still has the pencil sketches in his joints. This is how artists, especially art students, start learning to draw anatomy. You sketch out the joints of a form and then connect it with lines and then limbs, and then you fill in all the figure. This could be showing that the Spot has been reduced to a more fundamental form of the universe, like his capability of shaping the multiverse with all of these spots. Miguel says,
You have a choice between saving one person and saving every world.
Again, making it seem like he's going to be forced into sacrificing a loved one. Now we keep saying his dad's going to die because he dies in the comics and in the excellent PS4 Spider-Man game.
Spoiler!
So Miguel tries to make the case to all the other Spider people would want to save Uncle Ben, and Miguel says,
If not for Uncle Ben, most of us wouldn't be here.
Which is harsh. He's basically saying that the deaths of infinite Uncles Ben were worth it because it created all these different spider heroes. Now there's a few interesting shots during the trailer where we see Miguel with fangs, which he has in the comics. He's much more spider-like in the comics, with venom in his teeth and talons that he uses to climb walls. We also see Spider-Bite, aka Margot, who lives on Earth 22191. This universe is basically all virtual, with people living in virtual reality like the book Ready Player One. There's a few shots in the trailer of all the spider people meeting in what looks like cyberspace, probably because that's a secure way to visually communicate with one another across different realities. A few small details throughout the trailer. This billboard in Mumbai reads Sacred Wars, which could be an Indian Spider-Man spin on Secret Wars. There's also this buzz that says spoiler on the side. Now the channel Heavy Spoilers had a fun theory that this is only in this for the trailer, and that it's hiding an actual spoiler that'll be in the movie. There's also a billboard that says 42 Sushi, again showing that this movie will have many references to the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Then there's a chase in the 2099 highway with all the spider people chasing after Miles. Peter is carrying Mayday and her baby Bjorn, and notice her cute little baby hoodie is just like a spider costume. Terrible for his secret identity, but very adorable. And then, oh my god, yes, we see Ben Reilly, aka the Scarlet Spider. He is drawn very much in the 1990s style of Tom Lyle, who originally designed the character. So Ben Reilly was at the center of the Clone Saga in the 1990s. The comics were not good in hindsight, but at the time, it was like edge of your seat level hype. Basically, an old clone of Spider-Man came to town when Spider-Man was going through a lot of personal stuff, and we weren't sure who was the real person. Was it Peter Parker or was this new guy? The clone assumed a new identity named Ben Reilly, named after his Uncle Ben and Aunt May's maiden name. And then he created this extremely 90s persona for himself. He eventually became Spider-Man for a little while, with Marvel retiring Peter temporarily. Then they realized that was a bad idea. They brought Peter back and revealed that Ben was the clone.
What a twist.
Eventually, Ben came back to life as a villain. Very long story. In fact, we could do a whole video on the Clone Saga, so I'll just stop myself there. I do love how they lifted his image, though, straight from the comics. And then Miguel calls all the spider people to action as we get a massive reenactment of the spider pointing meme. This was replicated in the last movie and in Spider-Man Homecoming, and I think we're good now. It was great. The internet had fun with it. We enjoyed it, but we're good. Find a new thing.
We've had just about enough, dude.
And by the way, here's the original clip that it's actually from.
That man's an imposter. That man is the imposter.
Then we end on a button with a spider shrink helping a Spider-Man. Now notice the Spider-Man bust on his desk, like how a psychiatrist might have a phrenology map of the human head, and then there's a spider Rorschach test on the wall in the shape of a spider, meaning that every Spider-Man who looks at it is always going to see a spider there. We also see a spider horse break through the wall, and that's cool that we get an anthropomorphic Spider-Man, but look, if we don't get to see Spider-Ham in this movie, I'm gonna riot.
I just washed my hands. That's why they're wet.
And now let's run through all these Spider people. Now special thanks to the whole Screen Crush team for helping to spot these, especially Srinidhi Rao, Sean Martin, and Matt Singer, author of Spider-Man From Amazing to Spectacular. So this kind of looks like the chasm suit that Ben Reilly wore when he became a villain. This is Mangaverse Spider-Man, who fights Japanese versions of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery and is of course also Japanese. This is Superior Spider-Man from the great run by Dan Slott, where Dr. Octopus killed Spider-Man and took over his body to prove that he was the better Spider-Man. This looks an awful lot like the Velocity suit from the PS4 game. This is Spider-Woman, the rubber suit from when Spider-Man fights Electro, and this red and gold suit was a gift from Tony Stark when Spider-Man joined Tony's side in Civil War. Also, this is Bruce Banner Spider-Man from Earth 7105. He got bit as an adult and then rampaged like the Hulk and then joined S.H.I.E.L.D. Here we have the Armored Spider-Man, who first appeared in the Web of Spider-Man number 100, the Earth 61422 Spider-Man from the Spider-Verse comic crossover, PS4 Spider-Man, who pops up a lot in this trailer, and then the Spider-Man Armor Mark II from when Spider-Man briefly lost his spider sense and needed more protection, and here is the Future Foundation Spider suit from when he joined the Fantastic Four. This is Spider-Side, a shape-shifting spider clone from the Clone Saga, Spider-Cop, the aforementioned Lady Spider, and this is Spinnerette, an alternate version of Mary Jane where she got powers with her daughter, Spiderling. This is a werewolf Spider-Man from Earth 7085, aka the universe where they all became wolves in a Galactus. This is Flash Thompson as Captain Spider. This is one of my favorites, Bagman. When the Fantastic Four helped Spider-Man lose the Venom symbiote, he needed clothes to travel home in, so they loaned him a Fantastic Four suit, but put a bag over his head to protect his identity. It was the Human Torch's idea of a prank. This is Spider-Man from the original and excellent PS1 game. This is the Spider Armor Mark III, created to help Peter fight the Sinister Six, and the aforementioned Spider-Punk. Here we get a better look at the Spider Armor Mark II and a huge Spider-Man in a black suit, making me wonder if this could actually be Venom. Then we get into the huge group shot where we see Jessica Drew as Spider-Woman and Cyborg Spider-Woman with a much better look at manga Spidey. Over here there is a giant Spider-Man who might have gotten into some PEM particles, and this one's from the Spider-Man Unlimited animated series. And in the wide shot, this guy is hanging one-handed like Andrew Garfield in No Way Home. We get a better look at the Flash Thompson Spider-Man and the Superior Spider-Man as well. There are also lots of Spider people who I think are originally created for this movie, and I'm very excited to see what they do with them. And guys, just a reminder, get your Nebula Capsule 3 projector with our link in the description below. Well, that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let us know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.